Hello, thanks for joining in to today's broadcast. So, the coronavirus. Trump has appointed Mike Pence to be the lead person in charge of unifying and overseeing the United States response to the likely pandemic currently affecting multiple countries around the world. And I believe a new case today has been... rats. 1 second, guys, I've got to open the door. Hi, come in. Hello, thanks for staying with me. So we're talking about the coronavirus, the fact that Mike Pence is the new coronavirus global health czar. Hello. And yes, Pence's history as a one-term governor of Indiana is associated with policies such as making needles prescription only, i.e. you had to have a prescription before you could have a syringe. So people without a great deal of money were syringe sharing, including drug addicts, which resulted in a significant outbreak of HIV. Hello. 1 second. Hello, come on in. Do you want me to turn off the air conditioning? Okay. All right. So Pence obviously is someone without expertise in the area of health and health policies. He was still defending smoking as being unrelated to development of cancer as recently as the year 2000. So a lot of other people have also noted that Mike Pence is not a well-qualified person to be in charge of a nationwide response to infectious disease or any significant health concern whatsoever. Okay, just get rid of that. Harvested Beat says you've got people pulling you in all directions. It's just the one person. But I shall be here going forward. So what's our response to that? And how do we feel about the Republican Party potentially capitalizing off increased fears of disease? Because in 2014, as I pointed out yesterday, there was a surge in support for the GOP in red states. So if you're already inclined to vote Republican, turnout for Republicans increased and polled support for Republican candidates increased. So someone's asked what country I'm in, and I would say that's none of your business. If you enjoy listening to me and gain insights from my analysis and my amateur reporting, then that's good. That's great. Someone else is saying Trump doesn't trust anyone outside of his circle, so Pence is his guy. True, and a lot of people have noted about fascists that they trade on incompetence. They mess things up, and it still makes more people suffer, which then feeds into their method of governing, which is exploit the suffering of people who then may not be able to think rationally, but who can be galvanized into some type of unity around identifying enemies, whether or not that identification and blaming process has any basis in reality. So Hitler was able to trade off pre-existing anti-Semitic sentiment in Germany to unify people around an anti-Jewish platform, because he could also conflate Jewish people with communism. Karl Marx was a Jewish person. I don't think a practicing Jew, but he came up with the idea of communism in the first place. And knowing as we do that communism has resulted in the deaths of millions upon millions of people around the world, yes, we're not grateful to Karl Marx, but we rational people don't then go, oh, Jewish people must be eradicated because of the philosophical musings of one Jewish man, regardless of how that philosophy has been abused by despots around the world. Communism is a system that lends itself to totalitarian rule it overly invests in leadership, whilst claiming that governance will be effectively done away with because just the people will be in charge of things. There always has to be someone organizing what the people get up to. So no, I am Australian. Yes, Karl Marx was a non-practicing Jewish person, bourgeois, felt guilty to have an amount of wealth when he could see that other people didn't. So that's a big foundational block of people's legitimate fears of communism, but compounded that with irrational fears of Judaism or people from a Jewish background. The same as now when right-wing people ramp up anti-Jewish sentiment because they have irrational hatred of migrants as well. They don't understand that migrants and the welcoming of migrants to the United States has been a significant engine in America's growth, prosperity, and innovation and entrepreneurship. So someone's saying, I don't see corona as a big deal, the coronavirus. Well, I guess that would make you kindred spirits then in sentiments with Rush Limbaugh, who has argued that it's effectively just a common cold. That wouldn't entirely explain why multiple doctors in China have died as a consequence of treating people with the coronavirus, and the known infection rates, which are still probably lower than they should be because China is likely still diluting some of the figures. It's huge. It's massively outstripped SARS as well as Ebola, which is more lethal than contagious, or its high lethality rate probably reduces some of its contagious ability because people die so quickly from Ebola. In any case, the RO number of coronavirus is very high. Someone's saying firing is no big deal to either of them, but that might be a typo because I'm not sure what you're talking about. So let's go look at some evidence. I will bring up some details so that we can have a look. There's a very good graph that's been done recently. And I'll just go and look at my profile page because what I'm thinking about is often reflected in what I'm tweeting about. So, I can see myself on the screen now. My hair needs a brush. There was a cool quote from someone called Radley Balco that said, any president could have appointed a public official with experience handling outbreaks of deadly disease. Trump picked one of the few who caused one. So that's in reference to Pence's one-term governorship of Indiana in which he caused an HIV outbreak.
Sorry, I go and pick later.
Yes. So there's an article I'm looking at right now, which I might bring up on screen, and I'll first show it to you. So let's share screen so you can all see what I'm going to look at, which is an article in Politico saying endangered Democrats sound the alarm on Bernie and Warren. So people often like Elizabeth Warren that are on Twitter because Twitter people lean left. And look, usually I really enjoy that because I lean left considerably. My understanding of the world is that recessions are often a function of the pendulum of power swinging too far to the right. So when there's pressure on unions, there's downward pressure on wages. When people have less money, they spend less money. And when people have less money, they spend less money, and that can be lead to a contraction in business activity, which can lead to a recession, and that Republican-style conservative policies can often compound the effects of a recession by failure to engage in any stimulatory measures, which often reduce recessions or at least stop the downward spiral, because recessions are like a downward spiral of someone hitting rock bottom with alcoholism or any type of addiction. When you feel bad about how things are going, and then you restrict yourself from going out and you become more isolated and you perhaps come up with rationalizations to defend your behavior, it's all a downward cycle. And economic recessions are similar. People being afraid engenders more reductions in spending, which constricts business activity further, which reduces people's incomes, which reduces the amount of money the government gets through corporate tax. And unless somebody makes some intelligent decision to try to arrest the decline by making a Keynesian injection of stimulatory measures, then you can cycle lower and lower in the spiral until you get to a depression. So it ends when people become brave enough to make the necessary decisions to stop ignoring the problem and to stop pretending that the answer to the problem is more unfiltered capitalism. Capitalism's great, etc. Yes, the big corporations definitely have very advanced mechanisms for avoiding paying tax or minimizing tax. But as Elizabeth Warren once memorably said, if you're a billionaire, you didn't arrive at that position by yourself. If you've built a factory, your goods were transported along roads that were paid for by the public. You employ people who have been educated at schools paid for by the public. People fly in and you can fly in and out of the country for business meetings or across the country using airport towers paid for by public funds, drawn from income tax on the public. So yes, the middle class are usually the trapped people paying taxes. People with very small incomes don't have enough money to qualify for paying tax, and very wealthy people can often get out of at least paying some of that tax. But there's still a significant amount of corporate tax derived by governments. So let's have a look. I'm going back to my article that I'll now click on, because it's very important to consider not just the presidency, but down ballot. How do people feel who are running for office at the House and Senate level? So vulnerable House members are rallying behind Joe Biden, looking to head off a Liberal nominee they fear would cost them re-election. So when was this published? Okay, the 11th of January. So more than a dozen swing seat freshmen have taken part in at least one private call session with Biden, Klobuchar, and Buttigieg, and a handful have already gravitated towards the former vice president. Okay, yes, because Biden is still the most likely to attract votes in swing states. Bernie definitely has a great deal of momentum with his campaign, because Bernie, like Trump, is good at galvanizing people around the idea of a common enemy. So for Trump, that common enemy that he implies he will make a stand against is migrants, irregular migrants, and even the implication of other migrants from other countries as well, because he's definitely done a lot to sabotage legal migration as well. Hey, DJ, thanks for joining in. So yes, I support Joe Biden in my capacity as a non-American, non-voter, just because I can see the need for all of the moderate candidates to coalesce into a moderate candidate who can beat Bernie Sanders, who is the Trump equivalent of a snake oil salesman telling people that he will solve the problems of America without needing to work with the establishment. And the establishment is essentially the legislative branch of the American government, which is split into three branches in order for to be a bulwark against tyranny, against the development of unitary authority without checks and balances. Because the framers of the American Republic understood that anybody given enough power without accountability can become detached from the collective conscience of a nation. and that people without consciences might believe they're doing the right thing, but can unleash incredible havoc upon the world and upon their citizens. So Mao, wanting to help Chinese citizens, caused an inadvertent famine, killing millions upon millions, like 30 million approximately, Chinese citizens as a consequence of changing their agricultural practices, diverting agricultural workers into steel production so he could look modern and impressive and say communism's definitely a viable system. And yes, so somebody's just joined and said the elderly will be affected. Yes, people with reduced lung capacity. We're going back to coronavirus now because of a commentator, and that's fine. People with reduced lung capacity are more likely to die from coronavirus. But even if it's just something that broadly affects a lot of people, excuse me. Hello. Yes, then businesses will be massively impacted because people will be restricted to their homes, quarantining rates will go up, schools will close down. Imagine how business activity would be affected. So even if everybody is just has their lives impacted, just imagine how long that could conceivably last for. A vaccine is 12 to 18 months away. Even when Trump says, oh, yes, a vaccine's just around the corner, his staff have been forced to clarify for him that he was referring to an Ebola vaccine. So Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. He is quite anxious about the stock market falling, but it's difficult to arrest the fall of the stock market because the stock market's been pretty cheerful about Trump. Stock market rose a lot under Hitler as well. Let's see if I can look up a reference for that statement that I'm making. Stock market. Okay, so I will now share this article with you guys so you can see as well. Okay, I'll show you the headline, Paying the Piper, Reaping the Returns, by a professor of macroeconomics and financial markets at the Department of Economics, Zurich University. So who can we see that? That might be too small for you guys to read. I'll enlarge it. So yes, overseas markets are tanking. The Dow Jones is also affected. Lots of stock in China affected. Yes. So communists used to argue that the Nazi Party was simply an instrument of capitalist forces. Interesting. There's one sentence I wanted to share. Here we go. Nazi Germany was no different, although historians... Okay. Sorry, I'll read from the beginning. Around the globe, politically connected firms are more valuable. Nazi Germany was no different, though historians have lacked convincing evidence to prove that claim. This column shows that Nazi-linked firms reaped astoundingly large returns when Adolf Hitler came to power. So the Nazis Party's rise to power made a big difference to the value of a firm that had given early support to the party, showing that the chances are that these contacts mattered. Yep. Big business aided the rise of the Nazi Party by giving financial support. They collected information on the stock market. Okay. So firms connected with the Nazi Party outperformed unaffiliated firms massively. This sounds like I'm promoting Nazism a little bit, but I'm not intending to do that. I'm trying to point out that when the stock market rises under Trump, people are perhaps anticipating that Trump will support business without any considerations for environmental impact or people's lives. So reducing the amount of premium associated with humane considerations gives vulture capitalism wings for a while. All right. Why did early loyalty with the party pay off as handsomely as they did? We do not know if loyalty was rewarded with additional contracts, loans on favorable terms, or in some other way, such as privileged access to foreign exchange. So the Nazis probably engaged in insider trading, much like Trumpism. Okay. So you can't read, Craig. I mean, not can't read, couldn't read it on screen. Next time I won't make the article fill the whole screen. So yes, so that was an interesting article about firms that were politically connected to the Nazi Party and even firms loosely associated with the Nazi Party benefited from Hitler's reign. No word about what happened afterwards, but yeah, no wonder the stock market increases in value under Trumpism, unless you get something like the coronavirus, which spooks the market, realizing how much people can be affected by the closure of businesses, closure of schools, forcible lockdowns and quarantine periods, etc. So, do we have anybody who wants to make any supportive words about Joe Biden and his potential chances in the South Carolina primaries? I'm, of course, concerned about how much Republicans have been instructed to go and vote in the open primary for Bernie Sanders in order to give Sanders a winning edge, help him collect delegates, and help him become the candidate that Trump would have to oppose. And they're doing that in order to keep Trump in power, presuming that Bernie Sanders is the weakest candidate. And I would still agree with their assessment of the situation, that Bernie Sanders will build an enthusiastic following, an enthusiastic base, but that his candidacy will repel many moderate voters and older voters. And say what you like about young people and their fervent support to a degree for Bernie Sanders, their turnout rate for their demographic is still maximum 36%, whereas the turnout rate for older people is 66%. So conservatism does matter, and it particularly matters in a country that has not just that doesn't have a popular vote winner, that has the electoral college system, which overturns the results of popular votes. So someone said, salute to my work, thank you. And Biden will be defeated due to pizza propaganda. What's pizza propaganda? Oh, you mean like the Pizzagate propaganda. Okay. I'm not sure what the pizza icon is in reference to. So you're 47 and you're hesitant to vote for him, but you will. Oh, through WikiLeaks like they did Hillary. Well, WikiLeaks is a little weakened by the fact that Julian Assange is in prison. So there might still be people liaising with Russia, but it's possibly not going to be to the same extent and strength as it was in 2016. The 18 to 24 demographic is pretty resoundingly left-leaning. And someone's saying they have the emails. But I don't think Joe Biden's emails can be made as much of an issue as Hillary's were, because Hillary did use a private server. Admittedly, she was using a server that had been established for her husband as a former president of the United States. So it was more secure than people were pretending. And there wasn't anything particularly contentious in the hacked emails. It was just the very fact that there were hacked emails that existed. So yes, I'm hoping for a Biden-Harris ticket. And yes, I think I'm feeling that there's a little bit low engagement today, which is fine. Perhaps I'll go back to Twitter to just refresh. What are people tweeting about on Twitter? So the trending, the number one trend is Pence. Yes. Oh, yes, I forgot to say that Mike Pence also doesn't believe in climate science. So he does not comprehend the risk posed to humanity, or he comprehends it and chooses to ignore it because his thinking is so effectively controlled by having political donors who pay him to think otherwise. All right. So yes, Pence is trending because of being in charge of the coronavirus response. Someone's betting that Trump is setting up Pence to fail so that he can replace him with Ivanka. Oh. And apparently there's an American rule that a president and a vice president can't be residents of the same state. And they're speculating that that might be the reason why Trump changed his residence to Florida. So perhaps Ivanka's still registered as a resident of New York. Yes, Pence's science denial contributed to one of the worst HIV outbreaks in Indiana's history. He has a record of ignoring public health advice. And he didn't just once write that he doubted cigarettes caused cancer. He wrote it a lot of times. He wrote columns and he propounded that argument a lot because he had cigarette companies donating to him. We have a limerick. Mike Pence caused an outbreak to grow and then became Veep, as we know. He now has new goals and duties and roles, including check smoke pad. Oh no. Uh-oh. Now, how audible is it that I have somebody drilling in my house? Is that audible? Because if it is, I'll just go and talk another time. Because they're fixing something. Pence's action plan to mitigate the spread of the coronavirus in the US: pray, conversion therapy, kill it with windmills, wait until April when the heat kills it, ask mother, and lift sanctions on Russia. That's quite comical. All right, chaps. Well, Craig is saying it's not too bad. Okay, good. I'm not hoping anymore that Trump's dementia symptoms will increase to a sufficient level to rule him out for the 2020 election. I think he's still able to walk and talk to a sufficient accuracy rate that people won't turn away from Trump because of it. So those of us who don't look at Trump with partial blinders on can see that he's impaired. People who see Trump as a savior and an equivalent to Jesus, or as a savior of the economy, or as a preserver of white demographic dominance, they don't care about those things, or they ignore them and minimize the significance of them. Hola. Yep. Oh. Yeah, that seems too noisy to me. I can't talk anymore, but I'll make this full screen so I can say goodbye. bye, everybody. Hope to talk to you again soon. And yes, it's probably, the microphone's probably just picking up localized sounds, but it's too noisy for me to hear myself talk, so I have to go. Thanks again for listening and being part of this conversation. Thanks to any replay viewers. And I wish us all luck. We should be stocking up on soap and shelf-stable supplies if we have to stay home, trying to find ways to make childcare arrangements if people have to go in groups to have someone look after their children. I'm covered for that. What meals would you make if you just had to cook shelf-stable things? Maybe jar pasta sauce and pasta, and you want to be eating all the fruit and bringing up your vitamin levels as much as you can. I think eating fresh fruit and vegetables is a much more effective way of obtaining vitamins than supplements, because I don't think there's that much evidentiary basis for vitamin supplements. But that's just on the basis of what my husband says, and he looks into it more than I do. But I have seen someone in the health profession argue that taking vitamin C supplements is a good idea. Let's see if I have anything about that. So nosy. If you can read that, yes, Pence triggered an AIDS outbreak by banning syringes without prescriptions. So that's said by a blue check account. So hopefully that confirms what I was saying before, providing more of that direct link between Pence's actions and a mass outbreak of disease. So perhaps Trump is hoping that Mike Pence will screw it up and that he can potentially appoint his daughter to be his vice presidential candidate. Kevin's buying masks tomorrow when he gets paid. How are the farmers going? If I remember correctly, Kevin is from Wisconsin, and wow, masks are $30 a piece. Goodness gracious. If we want a quick look at an old quote from Donald Trump, can we see this? Yes. So sometimes people circulate fake Trump quotes. So the one about firing someone into the sun if the Dow Jones has a significant fall is not a real Trump quote. But this, I can click on it here, oh no, it's just a picture. But Obama just appointed an Ebola czar with zero experience in the medical area and zero experience in infectious disease control. A total joke. I'm going to believe that until it's demonstrated for me otherwise. It seems more plausible than the falling into the sun, shooting someone into the sun hoax that's been perpetrated on Twitter folk. If anybody here's from South Carolina, please vote for Joe Biden, because it is going to be so important to have broad backing for a moderate candidate, because gosh knows every Republican is going to be, every very intense Republican is going to be joining in with the open primary, which means you don't have to be registered to a political party to vote in the Democratic primary. So Republicans can vote, and they'll be voting for Bernie because they see him as the candidate with the least likelihood of ousting Trump. I'm just going to share something that people said that's nice about Joe Biden, because that's something important that I think I can do at the moment, which is try and promote Biden, because all of the work I've done to say, yes, please, Americans, be alarmed and alert this is fascism and lawlessness descending upon you, feels a little bit wasted if people take those type of messages and say, well, then we definitely need Bernie Sanders, because to my mind, Bernie Sanders will lose you, if not the election, the House majority and any hope of having a Senate majority. And that will make it very difficult to get any progressive policies passed at all. And in fact, is likely to perpetuate the ongoing oppression of not only Americans, but the ongoing sabotage of climate change mitigation efforts, meaning that we're all more likely to die in the years to come, die prematurely, because not everyone's aware, but we're in a very significant time period where tipping points are being reached, whereby the human-led, industrialization-led emission of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere is increasing the world temperature to a point where the world's own stores of greenhouse gases, methane and carbon, that are trapped in frozen lakes and frozen soil are going to thaw because of the increased temperature, and thus massively escalate the problem, leading to huge increases in temperature that people are not prepared to cope with, and the human species can't easily coexist with. Temperature increases, heat waves, extreme weather events leading to mass crop failure, etc. So Kevin's saying farmers are not doing well. Bankruptcies are being reached at a terrible rate. Okay, I should go. My dad's call. Oh, okay, that's nice. Oh yeah, my dad's trying to call me. Okay, I'll talk to you all soon, guys. Thanks for joining in today.